Strange video title, but okay. So before we begin, I'm most likely going to be saying some controversial things in this video. But these are just my thoughts, and if you disagree with them, that is totally cool. Let's start a conversation. Let's hash it out, learn some things, expand our horizons, get out of the little bubble of comfort that we often collectively herd ourselves into. Let's leave the place where we don't stand out and risk being shamed and pointed and laughed at, or derided for having a perspective that may differ from the conveyor belt of mediocrity and banality that this world currently finds itself asleep on. Let's explore new horizons and deeply question why we find value in things, so we can further our understanding of why we like to create and make music. Let's deal with one big question. Have we strayed so far from the path of artistic expression that we don't even know what it is anymore? Are we celebrating our downfall into mediocrity? Okay, that was 2 questions, but you get the point. This is clearly going to be a chill and light-hearted video, isn't it? A seemingly very strange title to this video, I know, but allow me to explain. It was one of those familiar evenings, going through my YouTube recommendations, stumbling on a podcast, I forget which one. I can't really even remember the overarching subject of the show, but one of the guests started on a monologue about perceived authenticity, using a strawberry as an example. And paraphrasing, this is how it went. The farmer spends time nurturing the soil, planting the seeds, caring for the environment that the plant will eventually take root in. The stalk grows, becoming more full with leaves over time, carefully being watched and looked after. A fruit starts to emerge, taking nutrients from its host and its surroundings, again constantly being cared for. And finally, that beautifully succulent reddened fruit is ready to be picked. A sweet, possibly tangy strawberry, refreshing, a complex and nuanced palette of tastes. And then someone figured out how to reduce that strawberry down to its fundamental key taste factors, over time further refining it down or enhancing one aspect of it for more sweetness or tanginess. Strawberry flavouring now proliferates. Milkshakes, sweets and even beer, all infused with the flavour of strawberries, all infused with this essence, the ghost of the original strawberry, chemical manufacturing, stripped of its real nature, but similar enough that the consumer learns to enjoy it and accept this new refined flavour as either equal or better than the original. But it isn't. The nutritional value isn't there anymore, and the flavour is just a poor imitation. But it was cheaper to make, quicker to make, easier to mass produce. We lowered our standards in the name of expediency, and we are thankful. Now what does this have to do with music? From the creation to the consumption, our perceived quality control, the standards we define or change to suit our individual or collective ego. Is the quality of music on the whole becoming a pale imitation of that we once strived for, that we now lazily dismiss as old hat? And as long as you have that cracked copy of Vital, Serum and that latest sample pack ripped, look out world, Beethoven won't have anything on this next collection of sounds compiled together and vomited out into zeros and ones. Am I making any sense? Hopefully you're still with me. I appreciate the perspective everyone will have on this subject will differ, from generational to cultural reasons, from personal taste to the understanding of music as an art form. But I hopefully want to cut through that and relay what I'm seeing happening to the state of music overall. So without giving a full entire history of music, let's take a quick moment to discover the journey we have collectively travelled as a species with this medium. So music was initially a vehicle for celebration, a way for communities and individuals to praise and worship the giver of life. Over time it became a way for us to reflect on ourselves, our troubles, the world around us, pose questions about the current state of affairs and where we were possibly going in the future. It was filled with a myriad of emotions, either as a vehicle to understand or to release. And mostly we used our voices and makeshift percussion that we made. Then we advanced into new technologies, instruments that could play melody and harmony. We had a more expansive tool set, more possibilities. We spent time nurturing the gifts we were given, becoming apparent masters of different instruments, tapping into the creative force around us, lifting the veil occasionally of the transcendent unknown, giving life more meaning and understanding. But then we created corporate-backed factories of PR men and label managers. We spent our time analysing past musical works to extract the formula. We set up test groups to judge responses and find the most expedient way to milk music for every last cent. We built an industry upon music to sell other things. Music was no longer about self-expression and the previously unknown. It was about soundtracking the next brand, the next visual stimuli, the next consumable product to be ingested, used up and forgotten about. Technology kept advancing faster and faster. On the creative side, Technology brought ease of access to those who couldn't afford expensive studios and instruments, the ability to create at home or wherever they happened to be. These same tools made it way easy to make music, but we started to sacrifice our drive to learn and expedited basic skills to pre-made building blocks. Like a jigsaw puzzle, we're just putting the pieces together to complete the now accepted formula to then rinse and repeat. On the consumer side, collections became digitized and then we gave up ownership. Streaming ease of access to our favourite songs gave way to corporately curated playlists. We are giving over our ownership of personal discovery to a monetarily driven fear of missing out. So you like the music you're told to like, you stay in the herd. We enjoy it because it's the accepted norm, constantly feeding the spiral down into derivative malaise. Are we dying creatively? That's a big question, and let's try and unpack that. For most of humanity's history before the ability to store recorded music, in some form of medium that allows us to play it back on demand. Actually, let's stop for a second and ponder that. For only around 170 years has humanity had the ability to listen back to a song in near exactness to how it was performed. Before that, we stored it in word of mouth or written form, and each performance was a slight variation on the last. Also, every time you remember something, you're only remembering the last time you remembered it. Anyway, where was I? Yes, before the ability to record, if we wanted to express ourselves musically, a lot of time, learning and practice was needed, not only to be proficient, but amazing at making and playing music. As technology improved and we moved into the computer age, we started to build tools that lowered the entry difficulty into making music. Singers no longer needed to be pitch perfect, because software could retune that after the fact. Musicians can now splice together many different takes to create that one perfect performance. Software can now even parse together the fundamental building blocks of music, such as rhythm, harmony and melody together all just at a push of a button. All the user has to do is put the jigsaw puzzle together. I'm not going to touch on AI in this video, but that's a whole new added dimension to this as well. Now obviously I'm not anti-technology when making music, I use it all of the time in my own productions, but we have to admit there has been a big trade-off. We no longer strive to be better and better at making music as we used to. You can always polish it up later and fix that mistake in the recording. Now hands up, I am guilty of doing this as well. Cutting recordings of my playing together to make something that sounds unrealistically good. We don't even have to just consider the merits of playing an instrument really well. Using technology to make music, we can bypass the traditional instrument playing entirely and just use other people's work in the form of samples, presets and so on. Now I'm not saying any of this in and of itself is a bad thing, but how we approach and use these tools I believe really does matter. We are risking losing the soul in that which we create, expediting the music making process to the point where everything is just becoming another cookie cutter derivative or another adaptation of the formula. The performance inside recorded music is becoming ever increasingly more sterile and digitally perfect. We seem to be sacrificing the rawness of our human performance for synthetically composed perfection, so no one can point out any possible flaws. But it's becoming more and more soulless and vapid, forgettable and throwaway. We are replacing inspiration with trend following. We've stopped listening and waiting for that creative spark to manifest, and instead of just constantly spewing out more and more music. That is okay, but could have been great if we didn't feel a need to keep up with an ever-quickening world. We are running headfirst into futility and obscurity just for the hope of 5 minutes of fame. We've replaced our own critical thinking on what music we think is good, with how many listens or views it has to decide its quality. We now use popularity as the key indicator of what is objectively good. Now don't get me wrong, obviously amazing songs are going to have a lot of listens, but so do a lot of songs that are hollow imitations of artistic expression. Marketing budgets hand in hand with social media outlets now control exposure level to audiences. Companies also pay for or provide services to artificially inflate views, to game the system that music is filtered through. How much great music are we allowing to fall through the cracks? Because we either don't want to leave our nostalgia-driven bubble, or that we can't be bothered to go and look for music unguided by the corporate-backed playlists. Some statistics for you. 75% of artists on Spotify have less than 50 listeners each month. 93% have less than 1,000 listeners each month. That means 7% of all artists have the lion's share of listens, and within that 7%, a minute fraction dwarfs the rest. Yes, we can consider the Pareto distribution, which is extremely reliable and usable in this context. The Pareto distribution expresses that 80% of the outcome, which in this case is music listens, is due to 20% of the cause, in this case artists, but the above Spotify percentages show an extreme skew way beyond this. I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that 1% of all artists account for 99% of all listens. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if this was truly a culmination of audiences naturally gravitating towards said music. But as I stated before, manipulating exposure or outright buying listeners is artificially controlling the music world. Now, the response to this has been for smaller artists to up their output to compete with the machine. Daniel Ek, CEO of Spotify, stated in 2020 that he wants artists to pump out more content, but to what cost? The end goal for corporate heads like this is to bump up share prices. This is a huge price to pay for the degradation of artistic quality. We are filling the void with more and more noise for the consumer to get oversaturated with. This makes a listener want to fall back on that which they already know and trust. As an example, surveys suggest that most people stop discovering new music by the age of 30. Could this be one of the reasons why? Are we creating a feedback loop? We keep putting more music in for a shrinking audience that are increasingly fatigued by a never-ending deluge of content. The more I keep thinking about the subject, the messier it gets. So what can we do about this? Firstly, we could stop treating creativity like a business. We put the dime in the creativity machine and push the button, expecting the amazing song to pop out instantly for us to then mass market and move on to the next thing. But that's not how it's supposed to work. Greatness and profundity take time. The vast majority of songs that shook the foundations of our understandings of reality didn't just instantly appear. Behind most of them is a story of people who spent years honing their craft, going through incredibly tough times, almost giving up over and over again, until they were finally able to put forth that amazing composition that made its mark on the fibres of history. We could stop photoshopping our musical skills with technology and return to the days of putting in that hard work, where we strive to be masters of our craft. We could take the time as listeners to reject that corporately sponsored music that is wrapped in plastic and fickle celebrity culture, and step off the beaten path and go discover a hidden musical gem made by someone who poured their heart and soul into it. We could stop allowing and propagating a popularity contest of hedonistic whimsy that almost betrays the very purpose for music existing in the first place. We have the whole musical world at our fingertips, yet we have isolated ourselves within small bubbles of safe familiarity. Let's expand our horizons again. Now that everyone feels sufficiently attacked, that was all mostly rather miserable, no? It may be perceived that I've said all of this from a throne of ego and pathos, but really a lot of this I have struggled with myself, sometimes following the trends not just in consumption but in the music I make myself, sometimes trying to imitate the formula, trying to ride the wave of current trends of the musical ocean. But just like fast food, it only gratifies for a moment. After a while though, it started to make me feel ill, full of the next new thing but empty of substance. The way I see it, we have two options before us. Continue to consume and add to the never-ending pile of songs that will be quickly forgotten, enlarging the coffers of money men that aren't really interested in the longevity of art or the language it can speak to the depths of our souls. Or we could take a step back from the soulless, life-sucking corporate music machine and find that which can truly edify the senses. Create that which asks big questions and makes us ponder the meaning of life. Purchase and support the work of musicians that are continuing to push the envelope further. We could take back control of what we allow ourselves to be entertained by and what we allow our imaginations to be captured by as well. You may ask, who am I to say any of this? What qualifications do I possess to decide what is and isn't valuable in music? Well, the answer is it's not really about me or the qualifications that I possess. It's about the music that leaves a mark. Music that has that impactful quality. Songs that stand the test of time, that resonate through generations and cultures. Those things are self-evident and we usually know it when we hear it. I think along the way we've slightly forgotten to seek that out, instead expediting that process to faceless corporate entities that will regurgitate their own vested interests back at us. We need to find the value in music again and resist the urge for it to just be another product that we consume, to fill in the empty void of discontent that we are allowing to grow within us. Yes, this requires work and perseverance and finding integrity in the arts again, but that's so much more worth it than the alternative. Let's not give up. Let's find the beauty in music again. Turn off the distractions and the noise. Search for that joy of creativity again. Get off the bandwagon and enjoy music not just because someone told us to. Let's bring that which dances with the imagination into reality. Walk along the sandy shores of humanity's musical output and keep looking out for that shimmering jewel that didn't have to force its attention upon you, but instead waits for you to sit and take a moment to appreciate life in all of its forms. Now, for those who may agree with the sentiments laid out in this discussion, and also for those who don't, I would now like to offer this opportunity for you guys to respond in the comment section. If you have anything to contribute to this conversation starter, you are welcome to leave a comment. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and as always, until next time, goodbye and God bless.